Welcome to Brewsers, a podcast about beer, coffee, booze, and bruisers. I'm your host, Rody John, and today we talk to the son of wrestling, Vincent Michaels. We talk all about how he was trained by Seth Rollins, the wrestling scene, and so much more. This is such a fun conversation. I love talking to students from any trainer, really, just because there's so many out there and so many fantastic wrestling schools. So, this one is the Black and the Brave, which is Seth Rollins' company out in Iowa. So we get all into it. But before we do, make sure to sign up for our newsletter. It comes out twice a week. You get even more information about our guests. You get fun facts, and you get to find out what's happening with your favorite podcast, all about beer, coffee, booze, and bruisers. So without further ado, here is the son of wrestling, Vincent Michaels. I would like to welcome to the show the son of wrestling, Vincent Michaels. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm great, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. So where are you calling from? Paint us a word picture.
I'm calling you from a suburb of New Jersey. I live right outside New York City. So if you want a general idea where I am, I'm right by the George Washington Bridge, right by Upper Manhattan. And so got nice, easy access to the city whenever I want it.
There you go. Yeah, there's so much. We all know it's the city that doesn't sleep, but there's always something going on in New York.
Oh, yeah, especially wrestling.
Oh, of course. Yeah, that whole, the New England area of indie wrestling is something that I don't think a lot of the rest of the country can truly understand, because you guys are all kind of packed in there together. And so, plus, your train system is such that it's easy to pop from one state to another to go hit some, other indie dates. You could probably work maybe two times a night, maybe even three.
Oh, sure. If everyone else's times end up being convenient enough,
Right.
it's very nonchalant to be able to go from, a show in a town where I am, and then breeze up to Connecticut or over to New York for a show in the mid-afternoon, evening, and then depending on how early some people might run, some people run matinee shows on Sundays. You could wrestle 4 or 5 times in a single weekend if you really felt like it, if you wanted to commit.
Man, that's crazy. Yeah, that's almost like, working WrestleMania week.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Now, what is your earliest memory of pro wrestling?
So, I don't remember this, but my uncle tells me when I was a small child, I used to play with action figures. He would get me Stone Cold figures, and he's even shown me a few of them, in the last couple of years, just to kind of prove his point, because I had no memory of this. My first actual memories of wrestling was actually, I used to play the SmackDown versus Raw video games before I knew that the characters in the video games were real people. So I'm playing SmackDown versus Raw 2006, and I think that all of these are, made up characters, maybe a superhero, Spider-Man, Batman type of thing, right? And then the next year, my uncle decides to show me an episode of SmackDown for the first time, and I realized, oh my gosh, all these characters I've been playing as, they're real people. This is incredible. I had no idea.
That's hilarious. It is funny what actually how people get into pro wrestling in general. And I love that not only the video games, but then also the action figures got you. And you didn't think that they were even real by any stretch of the imagination.
Exactly, because I remember every sort of toy I used to play with. I had Barbies at one stage. I had every kind of car and robot and transformer. But in my head, these were all just made up characters that weren't tangible in real life. I can't go meet Optimus Prime, but oh my gosh, I could go and meet John Cena. That's kind of where wrestling I think caught me in a way that other tangible things in life that entertained me didn't.
When was your first live wrestling show that you went to?
So that same year that my uncle showed me wrestling, I was surprised with tickets to a show. It would have been on the yearly Christmas tour that they do of New York, New Jersey. This wasn't the Garden. It would have been East Rutherford, New Jersey, at what became the Izod Center. I'm blanking on what the Continental Airlines Arena. That's what it was.
Gotcha.
And I distinctly remember on this Raw live event that there was a triple threat ladder match between, I want to say it was like Carlito, Shelton Benjamin, and Jeff Hardy. And it sticks out in my mind because when I look back in hindsight, I think to myself, they didn't used to do ladder matches on house shows. I must be crazy. But eventually I did find, online results for that house show. And in that winter of 2006, they did in fact do a slew of ladder matches on the live events to help with ticket sales. And boy, was that, no wonder it sticks out in my head now,
Yeah. Yeah, that is something that you wouldn't see on a house show in general, even though, I guess, looking back, the very first ladder match was Sean and Brett, and that was, I believe, a house show because it definitely wasn't televised.
Yes, because they were test running the concept for television with how they wanted to film it and everything else. So, in hindsight, it's crazy, but it's kind of interesting because this year, or actually it might have been last year now, they did a multi-man ladder match on a house show at the Garden that I attended. And it was kind of an interesting full circle moment for me to be like, wow, all these years later, I'm seeing another ladder match at a house show, something like 15, 16 years after the first time I went to a house show and saw a ladder match with nothing in between.
Right. That's nuts. Yeah, ladder matches are definitely one to watch live and just as much as cool as it is on TV, it's so much cooler in person, obviously, because you're hearing it, you're almost feeling it with them, and you're not having to worry about, the camera cutting from one side to the next. You're literally watching everything that's happening at one time.
Exactly, and in a way, it almost kind of holds your attention better because in person, you're actually watching a lot more of the moving parts. On television, they can hide when Kofi Kingston just got hit with a ladder 3 minutes ago and he's on the outside, kind of waiting for an opportune moment to come back in and do something. But at a live event, you're watching Kofi on the floor, you're watching the two guys in the ring do something, you're watching someone else getting ready to climb the top rope to do something onto them. And it's so much harder to keep track of, but that's almost what makes it more fun and really helps with the chaotic nature of what the match is supposed to feel like.
Right. Yeah, you're 100% right on that. And I always think if you're a fan of wrestling and you enjoy what you're watching on TV, go to an actual house show or a live event, as they're calling them, because they're far more free. There's no real time constraints. I mean, there is, but there isn't. And all the guys and girls are having far more fun at a house show than they are on TV because, again, they're not so constrained by what they have to do and can and can't do and all this, and they're just, it's just so much. It's the closest thing to an indie show that WWE can put on.
Right. Well, it's actually interesting that you say that because I think that while I definitely recommend everybody goes to house shows, I think there's a weird misconceived notion about the idea that they do have more freedom to do things on live events, but in a lot of ways, pardon me, live events now actually geared more towards character work and doing less in-ring action than they ever have been because at the end of the day, television is the platform that's making WWE the most money it's ever been making.
Yep.
And so when you see these guys and girls go out on television, they're actually trying to do more than they would on the live events because the live events are a lot more secondary now to their business.
Interesting.
So,
yeah, I didn't think about that. Go ahead.
Sorry?
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Okay. I've seen, the likes of my coach, Seth Rollins, go out there with, Dolph Ziggler, and you might think that, oh, man, on a live event, they might have a 20-minute banger that they wouldn't have the time to do on television. But no, it's actually a lot more character-based, it's a lot more theatrics, and it's a lot more, what do we do to get the engagement of the people without having to ruin our bodies the same way we would if we had a 10-minute match on television, because we actually have more time than we're used to getting. And it's really interesting as a wrestler now to see that mentality play out in person versus when I was a kid, when I was just excited to see, you know, the top guys up close in person do all of their big stuff.
Right. Yeah. So you brought it up, like you were trained over at the Black and the Brave with Seth Rollins. What was that like? And I guess going before that, when did you decide to make in your mind, the leap from being a fan to I want to do this?
So I always knew that wrestling was going to be the number one thing for me to do in life. I begrudgingly went to college. It was more like a thing of, you know, my family wants me to go and get this degree as a backup, but there was never any backup idea in my mind. I was going to wrestle, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get into wrestling and become successful, because I just earnestly don't see myself having any other alternative in life besides that. So, you know, it's a process, and getting in is expensive. Going to a very reputable school is very expensive, and the lifestyle that I led the last, you know, 8, 9, geez, we're getting on a decade now of traveling, going to a lot of the shows across the country. You know, it can be very taxing to do on top of just a normal everyday life where you have a 9-to-5 job, et cetera, et cetera. You're still going to school here and there. You're trying to figure out when's the best time, what's the right place to go, you know. And so the pandemic comes along, and all of a sudden I'm not traveling as much as I ever used to because there's nowhere to go. There's no shows to attend with fans. I'm saving up a lot of money because I was very thankful to have a steady job through the pandemic that didn't lay me off or furlough me or anything like that. And so I'm saving a lot of money. I'm not really doing much with my life at this point. And my girlfriend at the time, my ex now, actually was the one to tell me, like, you know what? I know you've always wanted to do it, and I think if you're going to do it, now's the time. And I was like, you know what? You're right. And we both kind of had the same thought of, like, there's only one real place for someone like me to go, and that was Black and Brave Wrestling Academy. And this would have been in the summer and spring of 2020. I signed up, and then I went and attended the school a year later in the fall of 2021, and the rest has been history.
How was that going through that process? Like, the first time you took the bump, what did you really learn from Seth? Like, I guess tell us what all that was like.
So, because the school is very selective about what they would like us to talk about in public interviews like this, I'm going to kind of lay off a lot of the how the school works, how things are taught to us. But I will say that Seth Colby, whatever you want to call him, he's a phenomenal instructor. He's a phenomenal on-the-job type of coach, you know, because at that time, fall of 2021, you know, he was just getting back on the road in a real, you know, traveling capacity. They were doing random tours to the UK at times of the year that they were never usually doing them when I was at the academy. And despite all of that, he was still in the gym minimum 2 days a week, at maximum 4 to 5, trying to help us with questions and answers and making sure that everybody was really up to speed with what we were learning, how we were putting things together, making sure that we all were keeping up mentally and not just, you know, because you can learn every move and trick in the world, but if you don't know how to use them and how to gauge the right times to use them, you're really not learning anything about how to wrestle.
True.
And so he was really the guy in charge of that aspect of the teaching, while Merrick Brave, you know, phenomenal wrestler in his own right, actually was just able to get back into competition after a short retirement stint. So, Coach, if you ever hear this, congrats on that.